colder. As I'm getting older, your people get colder. Most of us only care about money making. Selfishness got us following the wrong direction. Wrong information always shown by the media. Negative images is the main criteria. Infecting the young class.
Please welcome Senator Bill Nelson.
Wow. I think I know the outcome on Tuesday. I want you to know, one of the things you don't know is that I had the privilege when a new senator came from Illinois to the Senate. I brought him to Florida for the first time. I'll never forget this. We had a joint town hall meeting, and we had it in the Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church in Eatonville, Florida, the only place that would hold a big congregation, and so many people turned out to see Senator Obama that day. They were hanging from the rafters. And of course, now, years later, he's coming back to help some more of us, and he's doing it because he knows it's so important. Because think of the legacy that he has had and what they're trying to do to undo his legacy. And we're not going to let them do it. There's another reason, and he's coming here because he's tired of all the untrue things that are being said. The former president feels that politics ought to be about honesty and integrity. And he, of all people, can stand up in great contrast to what we see in the occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue right now. So what this election comes down to is trust and honesty. And it's about who do you trust. Now more than ever, the country, indeed Florida, needs people that they can trust. We need leaders who know right from wrong. Desde el día de mi juramento como un teniente en las Fuerzas Armadas, from the day that I was sworn in as a lieutenant in the Army, hasta el día que yo volé al espacio, until the day that I flew in space, hasta hoy in al Senado, until today in the Senate. Hay un gran placer, un gran honor para mí, para servicio público. It's a great honor for me as a public servant. Yo creo que servicio público es una confianza pública. I believe that a public office is a public trust. And the people have responded very generously to me over the years by placing their trust in me. And I'm proud that now you have a real choice in the Senate election between the record of me and my opponent. My opponent has cut education. I support education. I have tried to protect the environment. My opponent has savaged the environment. And you see the results of the green algae and the red tide. Hashtag Red Tide Rick. I have tried to protect health care. He, of course, has tried, not for 1 year, but for 7 years, to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And now he has allowed the state of Florida to go ahead with a suit in federal court that is trying to declare your protection if you have a pre-existing condition, to declare that unconstitutional. This is what we are up against. And ladies and gentlemen, you've given me the privilege of standing up and working on the jobs for the future, our aerospace program. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to Mars. And those high-paying jobs, the spin-offs from the new achievements in space, it all translates into American leadership in space and the jobs right here in Florida. And then let's don't forget what Mitch McConnell said just the other day. He said because of the big tax cut bill for the corporations, now he's got to find revenue. Where is he going? He said he's going to cut Medicare and Social Security. Not on my watch as long as I'm around. And so come election day, we all have a lot at stakes. And it means voting for leaders that really care about the people that they represent. And it means voting for leaders that really care about our state. And so I ask for this opportunity right now to come to introduce you to someone that I saw early as a young man as the student body president at Florida A&M. My wife and I had asked Andrew to come talk to a gathering that we have annually for college student leaders on the issue of values. And that young man has been one of the earliest, youngest city commissioners in Tallahassee, and then a great reign as mayor, and now he is going to be the next governor of Florida. Mayor Andrew Gillum.
What's going on, everybody? What's going on? Are y'all ready to flip Florida blue? That's not good enough. Are we ready to flip Florida blue? Y'all, that's getting a little bit better. I gotta tell you, it is such a beautiful sight from up here. If we could hold the election today, I think we would run away with it miles, miles, miles ahead of our opponents. Democrats, independents, even some of our Republican friends that are joining us today, are y'all ready to flip Florida blue for the first time in 20 years? I believe that we're gonna do it this time, y'all. Listen, you all have heard me as I have moved around this wonderful state of ours for now 21 months. And you've heard me over these last 21 months do my very best to introduce myself to you through my lived experience, oftentimes talking about my mother Frances, who birthed us in Jackson Hospital right down here in Miami. My mother Frances, who was a school bus driver for the Miami-Dade school system. My daddy Charles, who was a construction worker, and when my dad didn't have construction work to do, you would find him on the street corner selling fruits or vegetables to folks. On Saturday mornings, he would set his truck up in the open field across the street from the cemetery and sell flowers to bereaved families. Between my mother and father, they are the best examples of hard work that I know to this day. And I gotta tell you, I am so very honored to have my mother here with me today, Frances Gillum. Say what's up, Ma. I love it. Y'all, she's getting used to this. She's starting to give the royal wave. But y'all, we've come a long way from Richmond Heights and South Dade. We now find ourselves in this moment where we sit at the precipice of something great, something transformational in our state. The opportunity to put the voices of everyday working people of our state back at the centerfold of public policy and decision making and results that come out of Tallahassee. Y'all, I'm here in South Florida today to ask you for the only thing in life my mother ever told me to ask for, and that's a chance. I want a chance. I want a chance. I want a chance to be your next governor. I want a chance. I want a chance to get to Tallahassee as your next governor so that we can work to pay teachers what they are worth for doing the most difficult job that exists in society. We're talking about teachers who, I have to admit, I would not be standing before you, not as the mayor of Tallahassee, Florida, and certainly not as the Democratic nominee for governor of the state of Florida, were it not for those teachers, those individuals who worked overtime on my behalf. They poured into me, they encouraged me, they inspired me to do the work that I thought that I couldn't get done by myself. They encouraged me to reach beyond my limitations. They poured into me, just as they pour into our young people every day of the week. And in the absence of our parents, these are the people who are responsible for the shaping, the molding, the inspiring, and the cultivating of the minds of our most precious gifts, our children. And that's why we gotta pay them a wage that they can live on, along with all of our support staff who make that possible. I want a chance. I want a chance. I want a chance to be a governor who will go to Tallahassee and will actually believe in science. It's more than a notion, right? Because we become so used under Red Tide Rick of denying the science, the fact that global warming and climate change is a real thing. When you live in the state of Florida and you're surrounded by water on 3 sides, you better believe it's a real thing because it has a direct impact on the future of this state. I want a chance. I want a chance to go to Tallahassee and achieve real criminal justice reform here in the state of Florida. Not only the kind of reform where once you have paid your debt to society, and you get out and you re-enter our communities, in my opinion, you ought to have your right to vote. You ought to have your constitutional right to vote. But not just that, y'all. You also ought to be able to get out and have your right to work, your right to earn a decent wage, earn a living for yourselves and your family. And when we win this race, we're going to reform the criminal justice system in such a way that gives people lift and opportunity and makes our state a safer state in the process. Y'all, when we win this race for governor, you're going to have a governor who will work to expand Medicaid for over 800,000 of the most medically needy people in our state. I want that chance. It is not only important that we expand Medicaid for those who don't have access to insurance, it's important that we do it for those of us who do, who want to be able to see health care expanded, but also have some predictability around our insurance rates that are increasing year over year over year, largely because these folks are getting access to health care in our emergency rooms. We can do better than that, y'all, and when we win this race, we will do better than that. We will do better. Y'all, I want a chance to go to Tallahassee and to take on the NRA and let them know. That's right. I want to let them know that their time of running Tallahassee has come to an end. I want them to know that the value of our children's lives are worth us standing up for them. No parent ought to have to send their kid to school worried about whether or not they will pick them up alive or in a body bag. No parent. No neighborhood deserves to be so ravaged by the violence and the everyday violence that pervades too many of our neighborhoods that you can't let your kids play outside. That is unacceptable. We can respect the Second Amendment and at the same time protect our families. And it's just this simple. If you want to carry the power of God at your waist belt, you ought to have a background check. If you are a convicted domestic violence abuser, you should not have access to weapons where you can snuff out the lives of your loved ones. If you want to shoot a gun that can fire off 60 bullets in 60 seconds, you ought to join the military. Those weapons have no place in everyday society. We can stand up for that kind of a state. Listen, y'all, I don't know how many of y'all saw the debates. Y'all catch any of the... If you saw the debates, you saw that my opponent, Mr. DeSantis, had repeated opportunities to tell the people of this state what he wanted to do for them. Instead, he was so quick to get my name out there that it was the only thing coming out of his mouth. Well, I'm flattered, y'all, but the people of the state of Florida deserve to hear what he wants to do for us. And unfortunately, he failed the test that is most important, and that is he couldn't be honest with you. He couldn't level with you about what he wants to do. He couldn't let you know that he voted over a dozen times to repeal Obamacare. He couldn't tell you that. Well, y'all, we have an opportunity to send Mr. DeSantis and Mr. Trump both a message on November 6th. Right? Listen, and let me put some more on that. We have a chance to send them an unapologetic message, right? One that will not confuse them, that their brand of politics is no longer acceptable in the state of Florida, at all, at all. So y'all, I want you to know that my wife and I, we're going to put everything we have into this. I'm so proud to be joined on this mission by the woman who is definitely and without a doubt the wind beneath my wings. She's here today. Baby, Andrew Gillum, will you stand up? Y'all, if you don't like me, vote for me because she could be your first lady. Right? But we're willing to go everywhere. We've traveled to red counties, to blue counties, to purple counties. We've seen crowds where we didn't have room enough to hold everybody. Putnam County, Clay County, Charlotte County, Escambia County. We've been all over this state, y'all. And the reason why we've gone to some of these counties, these deep red counties, because I want them to know that I want to be their governor too. I want them to know that. I want them to know that when I'm elected governor, I'm going to be a governor for all of the people of the state of Florida, not just some of the people. And so I want you to know that none of this will be possible unless we do our jobs. None of it. We can't just tweet about it, Facebook about it, Snapchat about it, and not be about it. And what does it mean to be about it? What it means to be about it is that we've got to go to the polls and vote like our lives depend on it, y'all. We got to do it. Because the truth is, our lives do depend on who the next governor is of the great state of Florida. So we got to bring this thing on home. Some of y'all have heard me talk about bringing it home. And I want to do it here before I bring out the next speaker. I want to remind you of what this thing is about for me. As some of y'all know, because my mother and father would have to get up so early in the morning and head to work, they would load me and my siblings up in the car and drive us to my grandmama's house, where she would let us sleep a little bit longer before she would get us up and ready for the day. And my grandmother had two rituals she performed. One, she'd get her bottle of olive oil, and actually sometimes it was cooking oil, whatever the greasiest thing she could get, and she would build a cross on our forehead. It was her way of sending us out into the day with a blessing that no harm would come our way. And then her mantra would be, boy, go to school, mind your teachers, get your lesson, and one day bring it home. She would say, bring it home for your little brother, your little sister, for that boy down the street that you play with. God knows where he gonna end up. Bring it home. Bring it home for your mama and your daddy who get up every day to go out there and slave on somebody else's job to keep a roof over your head and clothes on your back and food on the table. Bring it home. Y'all, what I would come to learn my grandmother was communicating was that it wasn't just about me, that it was about the collective. It was about all of us, that if I went far in life, we would all go far in life. That if I did good in life, we would all do good in life. And under Trump's America, they're trying to brainwash us into thinking that the only way we do good is by wishing for the failure of the person next to us. Well, y'all, I reject that brand of politics. I reject it. I believe that since we're all in the same boat, we all ought to put our oars in the water and row in the same direction. And that if we do that, we all go further. We all do better when we do better. And so, y'all, we've got an opportunity in this election to send a message not just across the state of Florida, but across the nation, that that kind of divisive and derisive politics has no place anymore. In fact, that message will resonate outside of our state, around the nation, and around the world, that America is still America again, and decency and common sense and goodwill can win out over bad. So I want you to join us in bringing this win home, not just for me. I want you to bring it home for the faces that I cannot recognize, the names that I cannot call, the communities and neighborhoods who need their fair shot at life as well. God knows I've been blessed over the course of my life to this point. Y'all, we want to make sure that we can create the kind of state that works for everybody again. If we get out and vote, if we get out and organize, if we vote like our lives depend on it, we can have that kind of state. But we cannot do it without you. So y'all, let's bring it home. Let's bring it home. Let's bring it home. Well, listen, now I have the opportunity to bring to the stage y'all gotta let me get his name out, please. I want to now ask that you give a South Florida welcome to our forever president, Barack Obama.
It's good to see all of you. So, first and foremost, give it up for your next representatives, Mary Barzey Flores, Debbie Mercasell Powell, and from the U, Donna Shalala, a leader that we are going to send back to the United States Senate, my friend, Bill Nelson. And give it up for an outstanding mayor, one of the most inspiring, gifted candidates that are running this year, the next governor of the next great state of Florida, Andrew Gillum. Give it up. So let me make a confession. I love you back. But you knew that. That wasn't a confession. Now, there are a lot of good reasons to come to Miami. It's starting to get a little cooler back in D.C. Leaves are falling and the wind's getting a little brisker. And, you know, around this time of year, you start thinking, I wouldn't mind being in Miami. Got the ocean. You've got really good Cuban sandwiches. You've got very nice-looking people. So there are a lot of good reasons to come to Miami. You know, it's okay. You know, you're right. Sorry. Don't curse in front of kids. Come on. Don't do that in front of children. Come on. So, we're okay. You know what? This is what I look forward to, is having a few hecklers to get me back in the mood. You know, it's like I enjoy that. You always got to have a few in order to know that you're on the campaign trail. So these are all the reasons I've come down to Miami. But the real reason I came down to Miami, because this Tuesday might be the most important election of our lifetimes. Politicians will always say that, but this time it's actually true. The stakes really are that high. The consequences of any of us staying home really are more dangerous. Because America's at a crossroads. The health care of millions. Hold on a second. Sir. Hold on a second. Listen, here's the deal. If you support the other candidates, then you should go support the other candidates. Don't be here. One of the things I never understood was why, if you're supporting the other guy, you come to my rally. Go to their rally. Go talk about what you're for Don't come hollering here. Where was I? So America's at a crossroads. The health care of millions is on the ballot. Making sure working families get a fair shake is on the ballot. But maybe most of all, the character of our country is on the ballot. In the closing weeks of this election, we have seen repeated attempts to divide us with rhetoric designed to make us angry and make us fearful. That's designed to exploit our history of racial and ethnic and religious division that pits us against one another. To make us believe that order will somehow be restored if it just weren't for those folks who don't look like we look, or don't love like we love, or pray like we do. So, it's an old playbook. It's one that the powerful and the privileged turn to whenever control starts slipping away. They'll get folks riled up just to protect their power and their privilege, even when it hurts the country, even when it puts people at risk. It's as cynical as politics gets. But in 4 days, Florida, you can reject that kind of politics. In 4 days, you can be a check on that kind of behavior. In 4 days, you can choose a bigger, more prosperous, more generous vision of America. An America where love and hope conquer hate. An America where we, the people, whatever we look like, whoever we love, however we choose to pray, however our ancestors came here, we can come together to shape our country's course. That's what Andrew Gillum stands for. That's what Bill Nelson stands for. I'm hoping that's what you stand for. That's what you can do when you vote on Tuesday. And then we've been at this crossroads. We've been at crossroads like this before. And each time we made the right choice, not by sitting back, not by waiting for history to happen to us, but by marching and by mobilizing and by organizing and by voting to make history happen. That's how we abolished slavery in this country. That's how we overcame a Great Depression. That's how we won women's rights and workers' rights and civil rights, LGBT rights and immigrants' rights. That's what made the story of America a story of progress. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. But progress never comes without a fight. For every 2 steps of progressive change, we often take 1 step back in conservative retrenchment. Every time we start pulling ourselves closer to our founding ideals, that all of us are created equal, endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. every time we start including more people in that promise, some folks start pushing back. The status quo pushes back. You win the right to make a union, SEIU. But then somebody comes around and tries to bust your union. You win a higher minimum wage. Then Congress decides we won't raise the minimum wage for a decade. You win the right to vote. They try to make it hard for you to vote. Making this country better has never been easy. I love you too, but this is serious. 10 years ago, I was campaigning for president. You know, I was in game shape back then. That's why I didn't lose my voice. I could talk all the time. Now I'm not used to talking this much. But 10 years ago, we had just gone through a period of conservative retrenchment. Republicans had been cutting taxes for the rich. They'd been cutting rules for big banks and for polluters. We had just gotten hit with the worst financial crisis in our lifetimes. And guess what? The Democrats had to come and clean up. Bill remembers because he was there. And so with the help of Democrats like Bill Nelson, we got the economy growing again. We covered another 20 million people with health care. We doubled the amount of clean energy we generate. We put tougher rules on banks and credit card companies. We cut our deficits by more than half, in part by making sure the wealthiest paid their fair share of taxes. So by the time I left office, wages were rising, the uninsured rate was falling, the economy was growing, and by the way, that growth has just kept on going. You know, I do have to make this point because right now Republicans are all, look, the economy's so good. Where do you think that started? When did that start? They're talking about how, oh, look, how many jobs we created. The economy created more jobs in the last 21 months that I was in office than it did in the 20 months after I left office. And at the time, they were saying how terrible the economy was. Anyway, we'll get to that. That's what a progressive agenda did. Now, we didn't get everything we wanted to do. You couldn't reverse 40-year economic trends in only 8 years. You couldn't bring all the jobs back that had moved overseas. You couldn't eliminate all the inequality that had built up, especially not after Republicans took over Congress and blocked everything that Bill and I and others tried to do. But now Republicans have been in control for 2 years, everything in Washington, White House, House, Senate. They've won governorships, including here in Florida. What have they done with that power? No, it's not true they haven't done nothing. That's not true. They cut taxes for the rich just like they did the last time. They stripped out rules to protect our air and water just like they did the last time. They ran up the deficit just like the last time. Just like the last time. And by the way, they actually know none of this is popular, which is part of the reason why, just like the last time, they're actively trying to disenfranchise voters to keep them from voting. They're also resorting to the same tactic that they did the last time, which is to try to scare folks with whatever boogeyman or divisive social issues they can come up with, just like they did the last time. Let's take a look at what they've been up to. They promised to take on corruption. Instead, they have racked up enough indictments to field a football team. You know, I didn't have anybody in my administration get indicted. I mean, I just thought that's how you're supposed to do things. They pledged to fight for the little guy. Instead, they doled out $1.5 trillion in tax cuts aimed at billionaires and corporations. Don't boo. Vote. Let me tell you something. Republicans can't hear you boo, but they can hear you vote. So they did not even pretend to pay for these tax cuts. And of course, deficits shot up. That's what happened. Except just 2 weeks ago, the Republican leader in Congress said, you know, now that we've gotten our tax cuts passed, we're very disturbed with the deficit. We need to bring them down. We're going to have to cut programs like Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. Hey, don't take my word for it. Look it up. That's what he said. In fact, look up anything I say today, because I promise you, I believe in a fact-based campaign. The point is that cutting Medicare and Social Security and Medicaid to pay for tax cuts for folks like Rick Scott does not sound like fighting for a little guy to me. You want somebody... Actually, I think, hold on a second. There's an interesting observation I want to make. Why is it that, hold on. Why is it that the folks that won the last election are so mad all the time? It's an interesting question. I mean, like when I won the presidency, at least my side felt pretty good. You know, I don't know why. It tells you something interesting. That even the folks who are in charge are still mad. Because they're getting ginned up to be mad. That's the mindset. So you want somebody who's actually going to work for working people? Andrew Gillum, somebody who's going to work for working people. Andrew's mom is right here. That's where he got his good looks from. Andrew was raised by a construction worker, a school bus driver. Had to work his way up the hard way to become mayor of Tallahassee. He knows the promise of this country, so he's not going to work. He's not going to work for people who had it handed to him. He's going to work for the people who had to work their way up, just like his parents did, to look after their families. Andrew has lived the American dream. And if you give him your vote, he will fight to make sure every child in Florida has the same chance that this state and this country gave him. Let's talk about health care for a second. 8 years ago, Democrats passed the Affordable Care Act. That law helps cover almost 1.6 million people just here in Florida. That law made it illegal for the first time for insurers to discriminate against folks who had a pre-existing condition. And by the way, for the young people here, you may not think about pre-existing conditions, but when you get to be 57, because insurance companies, they could categorize all kinds of things as pre-existing conditions. If you had asthma, you might not get insurance or it'd be really expensive. If you had cancer, they might not give you insurance. Just being a woman was considered a pre-existing condition because they would charge women more than men for insurance, which, when you think about it, makes absolutely no sense, because the condition women have is the power to give birth to us. And it seems to me you wouldn't want to charge somebody more for bringing us into the world. That's just my opinion. So we put in a law that said, no, you got to charge women the same as men. You can't discriminate based on pre-existing conditions. And okay, that's great. So, and by the way, on that vote, not a single Republican joined us. Not one. Zero. Nada. Zilch. None. Goose egg. None. None of them supported us. Now suddenly it's election season, and what happens? You've got Republicans out there saying, oh, well, we will protect pre-existing conditions. Trust us. Let's look at the record. Andrew's opponent was in Congress and voted to sabotage or repeal the ACA and protections for people with pre-existing conditions every chance he got. Bill's opponent, Rick Scott, don't boo, vote. So Bill's opponent is literally suing the government to overturn pre-existing protections as we speak. When I was president, Republicans voted more than a dozen times to get rid of protections for people with pre-existing conditions. Last year, they fell one vote short. One vote. If they win this Tuesday, they'll finally succeed. If they keep control of Congress, you better believe they're coming after your health care. Florida, we can't let Rick Scott become the deciding vote that guts your pre-existing conditions protections. In all of his time in office, Rick Scott could have expanded Medicaid and covered 800,000 more Floridians with health care. 800,000. Those are families. Rick DeSantis wouldn't even try. So if you want change, Andrew Gillum will expand Medicaid coverage. If you vote for him and you vote for a Democratic state legislature to help him, your vote could give 800,000 Floridians just like that the security of health care coverage. Democrats aren't going to let Republicans gut your pre-existing conditions protections. Democrats aren't going to let Republicans gut your Medicare to pay for their tax cuts. They're going to protect your care, period. But here's the main point I want to make, Florida. If Republicans thought their tax cut for billionaires was popular, they'd be campaigning on it, right? You don't hear a peep out of them. This was their main legislative accomplishment in Congress. They have not mentioned it in a single ad. If Republicans thought their endless votes to sabotage or take away your health care was popular, that's what they'd be campaigning on. You don't hear a peep from them about that. In fact, right at election time, suddenly Republicans are saying they're going to protect your pre-existing conditions when they've literally been doing the opposite. That's some kind of gall. That's some kind of chutzpah. Let's call it what it is. It's a lie. They're lying to you. A former Republican Congressman, David Jolly, just cast his vote. He voted for Andrew Gillum. He said, the reason's simple, it's because I've served with Ron DeSantis. That should tell you something. Let me tell you, somebody who had served with me in my party voted for the other guy, I'd feel bad. I don't imagine Congressman Jolly and Mayor Gillum agree on a lot, but maybe they, just like all of us, agree that there's some things bigger than politics. And that's on the ballot right now. What kind of politics do we want? Do we want a politics where people are yelling at each other and making lewd gestures in front of the children? Can't do that in front of mamas. Look, throughout human history, politicians have made promises that turned out to be harder than they expected, and so they pump up the good things that they did. They downplay the stuff that didn't work out. They try to put a positive. We're okay. They try to put a positive spin on things. It's not just politicians, by the way, that do that. Y'all do that too. You know, sometimes, Andrew, maybe this doesn't happen with you and your wife, but sometimes I'm at home and I'm doing the dishes. I say, hey, hon, look, I did the dishes. Michelle says, that's the first time in a month you've done dishes. Don't brag about it. I'm putting a positive spin on things. Then she asked me, what'd you do wrong? Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing the dishes. We all try to put a positive spin on things. But what we have not seen the way we're seeing right now is politicians just blatantly, repeatedly, boldly, shamelessly lying, just making stuff up. That's what they're doing right now all the time. And by the way, it's not the first time. They do this every election cycle. Try to terrify folks. And then the election comes and problem suddenly magically vanishes. You never hear about it again. In 2010, they said that Bill and we were setting up death panels to kill your grandma. Remember that? In 2014, they said, Ebola's going to kill all of us. Shut the borders. In 2016, it was Hillary's emails. They were all wound up about that. And the mainstream press picked up on it. This is terrible. This is a breach of security. You know they don't care about that, because if they did, they'd be worrying about the current president talking on his cell phone while the Chinese are listening in. They didn't care about it. They said it to get folks angry and ginned up. Now in 2018, they're telling you the existential threat to America is a bunch of poor refugees 1,000 miles away. They're even taking our brave troops away from their families for a political stunt at the border. And the men and women of our military deserve better than that. So there's just constant fear-mongering to distract from the record. Now the administration suddenly says, we're doubling down on an outdated Cuba policy, which all that does is hurt families and entrepreneurs who are trying to open up the Cuban economy. We need to get back to policies that support the Cuban people, make their lives better. That's change. That's what Bill believes in. That's what Andrew believes in. The point is, Florida, they make stuff up, but here's also the problem is too often we fall for it. Too often we fall for the distraction. You know, y'all remember Peanuts, right? Maybe some of you too young. Charlie Brown and Lucy with the football. And she'd say, go ahead, I'm holding it, you can kick it. And Charlie Brown would say, okay, and then she'd pull the ball away and he'd fall on his back. But he kept on doing it every time. Don't be Charlie Brown. Don't fall for the okey doke. Don't be bamboozled. Don't be hoodwinked. Because when you get distracted, while you're distracted with all this stuff they're making up, they're also robbing you blind. They'll be like, look over there. And then they're giving tax cuts to billionaires. Look over there. Then they're letting polluters poison your air and water. They will absolutely take health care away from millions the first chance they get while you are distracted with stuff that is not true. It's like the con where a door-to-door salesman says you need a security system while his buddy sneaks in the back and steals your stuff. But it's not just the practical effect in terms of policy. When words stop meaning anything, when truth doesn't matter, when people can just lie with abandon, democracy can't work. In our own lives, in our marriages, in our families, if consistently the people we're dealing with can't believe what we say, if our children see that it doesn't matter that you actually accomplish things, all you do is just make stuff up whenever it's expedient, society doesn't work. Democracy does not work. And that's what's happening at the highest levels. And the only check on that behavior is you. The only check on that behavior is you and your vote. And on Tuesday, you can vote for a politics that's decent and honest and lawful and tries to do right by people. If you're a Democrat, you better be voting for Andrew Gillum and Bill Nelson and the whole ticket. If you're not a Democrat, you should still be voting for them. Because it shouldn't be Democratic or Republican to say we don't just lie with impunity. It shouldn't be Democratic or Republican to say we don't just punish our political opponents trying to use a justice system. That we don't threaten the freedom of the press because they say something we don't like. It shouldn't be Democratic or Republican to say we're not going to target certain groups based on what they look like or how they pray. It shouldn't be Democrat or Republican to know that climate change is real and threatens our futures and our kids' futures. And Florida is going to see some of the worst effects of climate change unless we change course right now. I know Republicans may think that government should only perform a few functions, but one of those functions should be taking care of folks after a hurricane in Puerto Rico. I know there are conservatives who think we should be fiscally prudent. Well, there's nothing fiscally responsible about trillion-dollar deficits. I know there are sincere conservatives who are compassionate and must think there's nothing compassionate about ripping immigrant children from the arms of mothers at the border. I'm assuming that they recognize that a president doesn't get to decide on his own who's an American citizen and who's not. That's not how the Constitution of the United States works. That's not how the Bill of Rights works. That's not how our democracy works. People who think it's wrong to spend 8 years trying to take away people's health care and then spend the final days pretending you're Mother Teresa, that you're Florence Nightingale. People who, I'm assuming people must get upset when they see folks who spend all their time vilifying others, questioning their patriotism, calling them enemies of the people, and then suddenly pretending they're concerned about civility. And we don't need more mealy-mouthed elected officials who say, oh, well, I'm very concerned, or I'm terribly vexed by this bad behavior. But there's nothing I can do about it. We need leaders who will actually stand up for what's right, regardless of party. Leaders who represent the best of the American spirit, like Andrew Gillum and Bill Nelson. Patriots will stand up for anyone whose fundamental rights are at stake. Our neighbor's health care, somebody else's kids getting bullied. Will stand up if they see their gay friend getting harassed. Will stand up for the God-given freedom to worship without fear. That's what all of us need to stand up for, with clarity and patriotism and purpose, the values that bind us to our fellow citizens no matter who we are, no matter what we look like. That's what Americans do. That's what America is. That's what Andrew Gillum believes. That's what Bill Nelson believes. That's what you believe. A better vision of America. And that's where I'm hopeful, Florida. I'm hopeful that we will cut through the lies, block out the noise, and remember who we are and who we are called to be. I'm hopeful that out of this political darkness, I see a great awakening of citizenship all across the country. I can't tell you how encouraged I've been to see so many people getting involved for the first time, or the first time in a very long time, marching and organizing and registering people to vote. These incredible, inspiring Parkland students, I don't usually wear bracelets, but I saw some of the families backstage trying to transform unspeakable grief into a better world. Young veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan record numbers of women who are running for office. You know we need more women. It's a movement of citizens who maybe never had much interest in politics, but they said, oh, this time it's different. This time it's too important to sit out. They're lacing up those marching shoes. They're grabbing a clipboard because they believe in an America that's better, that's kinder, that looks out for one another. The antidote to government by the powerful few is government by the organized, energized many. The antidote to a politics based on division is a politics based on a sense that we're in it together. That's what this moment's about. And I have to tell you, Florida, one election won't fix everything. You know, sometimes I hear young people especially saying, oh, well, you know, I don't know, all politicians are the same, nothing changes, everything. You know what? It's true that one election is not suddenly going to eliminate poverty in this country. One election won't eliminate racism or sexism or homophobia. One election will not suddenly give everybody health care all at once or ensure that every child in Florida gets the kind of education they deserve. It's not going to happen just in one election, but it'll be a start. It'll be a start. It'll make things better. And when you start down that path of making things better, momentum starts to build. And then it gets even better. And it gets even better. So don't just sit back. If you don't like what's going on right now, don't just complain. Don't get anxious and freaked out. Don't throw up your hands in despair. Don't boo. Don't hashtag. Vote. When you vote for an attorney general and state reps, they will have the power to protect our voting rights and make sure our criminal justice system treats everybody fairly. When you vote, you have the power to make sure we strengthen laws that protect women in the workplace from harassment and discrimination, and make sure they're paid the same as men for doing the same job. When you vote, you have the power to make it easier for a college student to afford college and harder for a disturbed person to shoot up places where our kids learn and where our seniors gather to worship. When you vote, you have the power to make sure a family keeps its health insurance. You could save somebody's life. That power rests in your hands. And if you get involved, if you knock on some doors, if you talk with some of your slightly trifling friends, you get some souls to the polls. If you turn out on Tuesday to vote for this whole incredible Florida ticket, I promise you something powerful happens. Change starts to happen. Hope starts to happen. And with each new step we take in the direction of fairness and justice, equality, and opportunity, that hope spreads. It starts rippling. It enters into each of us. We get a sense of what is possible. And we remind ourselves of those better angels of our nature. It's up to you. Let's make history happen right here in Florida. Let's get to work. Let's go vote. God bless you, Miami. God bless you, Florida. God bless the United States of America.
Knocking on the door that holds the throne. I've been looking for the map that leads me home. I've been stumbling on good hearts turned to stone. The road of good intentions is